Hi, everybody. I'm welcome to Medical Mafia. I'm Greta Crawford. I just want to say really quick that my power went out, and it went out 20 minutes before this happened to start. So I'm working on battery life of computers and my neighbor's internet. So there may be some delays and things like that, but just bear with me, and we're gonna get this done and make this the best podcast that I've ever done, because I have two amazing guests on here. And I'm Greta Crawford. I'm founder of protocolkills.com and a survivor of hospital protocols. And I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in just a minute. But first, I wanted to explain how tonight's show, other than the lights being out, is different from any other podcast. So my guests are Scott Schara, Grace's dad, and Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. And I'm sure you've all heard of these two individuals. And along with myself, this is going to be a really unique group. We have a survivor with myself of hospital protocols. We have the father of a victim who was murdered by the hospital protocols. And we have a doctor who saved thousands by using alternatives to these protocols. And she, basically kept people out of the hospital and saved their lives. So we each have our own story. And we could do a separate podcast on each of us, probably 10 podcasts over our stories. And in fact, Lionel is going to put up some links where you can watch and learn the full stories of Dr. Bowden and Scott. And I encourage all of you to go and look at those links and learn more about them if you don't know who they are. But in this show, it's about sharing info from experts. So true experts. And to me, a true expert is someone that becomes an expert through experience, by seeking the truth, by gathering knowledge, learning the system and learning how corrupt the system is. And most we are learning more every day from shows like this. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I was aware of the dangers of the vaccine. So no one in our family was vaccinated, including myself. And I was aware of the ventilators. I had seen reports on that and how the ventilators were killing people. But, I thought, well, that's in the blue states. It's not down here in Texas where I'm at. They're not going to do anything like that. However, I was not aware of the drug remdesivir or the numerous other ways the hospitals were killing people. I didn't trust hospitals. But when I was coughing up blood clots, a lot of them, and my oxygen level dropped 66% and I couldn't breathe. And then the treatments such as ivermectin and HCQ were nearly impossible to get. I had no option. I had no other option but to go to the hospital. So I was on the verge of death in the hospital when I look back and I see that the poisons they gave me, the so-called medications, I never knew about them. I never approved them. The only way I found out about them is through my medical records. And one of the drugs, for example, is baricitinib. And so when I got my medical records, I went and looked up baricitinib, and first thing that pops up is a black box warning. For those of you that don't know what a black box warning is, it's basically something that can be potentially lethal. And it's a warning of who shouldn't have this drug or what interactions or things like that. The first warning that popped up for baricitinib was do not give to patients who have clotting problems or clotting issues. Remember I said I went in coughing up blood clots, vials of blood clots? I'm no doctor, but I think that would mean that I had some sort of clotting problems. And I shouldn't have been given that drug, ever. But you learn in hindsight. But God saved me. And I faced a point where I thought I was really going to die. And I said a prayer and I told God, I'm going to do your will, whatever it may be. At that time, I didn't know I was being poisoned. I didn't know what his will was. But he ended up saving me. And now I know what my purpose is. And I'm going to continue to do it no matter what attacks I get, whether they be physical or spiritual or electrical. I am going to do this. And I'll never be silenced. My guests tonight are amazing truth speakers who have faced backlash for doing what is right. They are on a mission to get the truth out, and they will never back down, and they will never be silenced. I think until their last breath, they will keep speaking out and telling the truth to everyone. Doing what is right and sharing the truth is not popular, and it's not a well-traveled road. In fact, it's pretty lonely, and there are times it gets very lonely. But I'm so grateful to share this road with these two individuals. I'd like to thank Dr. Bowden and Scott for joining me. And you can see they choose people over platforms because obviously I'm not a well-known person. This is not a well-known platform. This is the third show, and it's so far been pretty bumpy, another bumpy road, but we're going to get through it. I'd like to also point out that none of us are trying to elevate ourselves here. That's not what this is about. We're not trying to get followers or make ourselves known. What we're here to do is to make others aware of the dangers. We're here to warn about the dangers. We're not here to push fear or anything like that, but we want people to just do not be deceived. Be aware of things around you and don't just accept the truth from every expert you hear. Test every spirit. Test them all. Ask questions. We're sharing our stories from experience, and we have a true understanding of those experiences. Too many times people seek the experts who've never experienced treating a COVID patient, or they've never experienced treating a COVID vax injured patient. As a matter of fact, they won't even acknowledge it sometimes. We look to the experts who have never experienced being poisoned with COVID protocols. I was told, oh, remdesivir is safe. It saves so many lives. It's so wonderful, over and over and over again. And I said, okay, if it's so wonderful, you go take some remdesivir and take 5 doses of it and then come back and tell me how you feel. And then I don't hear from them anymore. And we also turn to experts who have never experienced witnessing their loved one die in the hospital, who have never screamed, "Save our daughter," while every trained professional stood around and allowed another human being to die. If you saw a dog in the road who had been injured on 4 lanes of traffic going 90 miles an hour, I guarantee you at least one person, if not more, would get out of their car, run in oncoming traffic, risk their lives, go scoop up that dog, not knowing whether it would live or die, and then rush it to a vet to try to save it. People would do that for a dog, but these trained professionals stood by and watched this girl die. And what's worse is they watched her family as they watched her die. It can't get any more evil than that. It's just disgusting. And I want to move on. Credentials seem to mean more now to people than logic, common sense, and morals. And I'm not hating on education at all. I have 3 degrees. I have a bachelor's and 2 masters. But you know what? Those mean nothing in this world if I can't think logically, if I don't have morals, if I don't have common sense, and if I don't have discernment from God. If I don't have those things, then a degree is nothing but a piece of paper. That's really what it is. But we need all of these things. And what's sad is even if you have an education and credentials, if you're not following the agenda of the system, they will degrade or devalue your credentials or try to take them away, like in Dr. Bowden's case. With Dr. Bowden, that so many people said, well, she's just an ear, nose, and throat doctor. She's not a pulmonologist. She doesn't know how to treat COVID. Well, pulmonologists killed thousands while she saved thousands, just as an ear, nose, throat doctor. And I can tell you, my pulmonologist didn't do crap for me. She didn't even listen to my lungs. All she did was harass me and tell me I need to get vaxxed, and then she threatened to kill me on a ventilator. So just because you're specialized in a certain area doesn't mean you have the knowledge or the skills or the discernment to actually help somebody. I want people to understand that. Experience is what's important here too. And now the voices of experience are overpowering the voices of the so-called experts. But the voices of experience and truth are always met with aggressive attacks and lies. A system built on lies cannot sustain itself. Its only form of defense is to attack the truth and those speaking the truth. So lies are a form of self-preservation for evil, while the truth is meant to help others. The evil and corrupt created social media platforms to monitor us and confine us in these little groups and censor us. They never expected that we'd figure out how to use those same platforms to get the truth out. Just as in the Bible, Haman built the gallows to hang Mordecai, but then the truth came out and Haman was hung on the very same gallows he built. What was meant for evil, God will use for good, the saving of many lives. And those aren't my words, they're in the Bible, so you can go look at them there. The individuals on the show tonight are committed to sharing the truth, and they will never be silenced because they know God wins. So before I bring on my guest, I want to take the first break. And seems like we've already had 4 or 5 breaks, but this is actually going to be a break with commercials, not just blackouts. Let's take a quick break and get the schedules for all the podcasts, X Spaces, and Telegram chats. There's so much info of all the podcasts that you can go look at, previous shows. Go watch those previous shows because we were warning you about things that are actually happening now. And be sure to share this link out to others to get people tuned into the Street Talk Network, because that's what they're here for. They're here to share the truth. They don't work for anybody. They're not paid for anybody. So help us out, and we'll be right back with my guests.
Reach, reach, keep on reaching. I keep reaching, reaching. I'm wishing we could live in peace. It's really not that hard. I'm wishing we won't hesitate or making leaps and bounds. I'm wishing we could learn to love, a love of who we are. My wish is on a star. Hear me calling, I'm calling real loud. Hear me calling, I'm calling to the clouds. Hear me calling, I'm calling real loud. Hear me calling, you know I'm so proud. Reaching.
Okay, we're back. And I'd like to introduce my guests tonight. First, my first guest is Scott Schara. Scott is a nationally recognized expert commenter on the medical murder agenda in America and the dangers of incentivized healthcare. Scott's research proves that this practice of medical murder is by design. The father of Grace Schara, a 19-year-old Down syndrome who died at St. Elizabeth Hospital, Ascension's health system, Scott is on a mission to spotlight the crimes of the American medical system. His landmark lawsuit in the medical murder of his daughter, Scott Schara versus Grace Ascension, concluded on June 19, 2025, with a win for the system after a 3-week jury trial. And it only took 15 minutes for the jury to come back with an answer. But this trial was not about winning. It was about exposing evil. The evidence against the hospital and the doctors was so solid and obvious that any logical person could have seen it. The jury disregarded all the evidence, all the facts, and all the lies that the defense were caught telling. What this trial showed is how brainwashed the average person is and how corrupt the systems are, from the healthcare system to the judicial system. It's all corrupt. But he is doing his part in exposing that too. And so I'm very excited to have him here tonight. And my other guest is Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. And I talk about Dr. Bowden all the time, especially in the area, because we live in the same area. And when I talk to people, I'm so surprised that people don't know who she is. I'm just shocked. And that tells you really how censored she is. But Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is a board-certified physician on both otolaryngology, please, I hope I said that right, aka ear, nose, and throat, and sleep medicine, and founder of Breathe MD in Houston, Texas. She has more than 2 decades of experience treating sinus, allergy, and sleep disorders. When she learned of COVID patients being sent home to get worse, she knew as a compassionate and common sense doctor, this was unacceptable. She offered mouth swabs instead of the nose swabs, and then she started treating COVID patients with alternatives like ivermectin, and successfully kept over 6,000 patients out of the hospital, ultimately saving their lives. After COVID, she became one of the few doctors to acknowledge vaccine injury and even help treat the injured when no other healthcare professional would even address the real issues or even admit that there was any wrongdoing of the vax. She's also the founder of Americans for Health Freedom, a grassroots coalition uniting more than 1,300 health organizations across the country. So I'd like to welcome Scott Schara, Grace's dad, and Dr. Mary Talley Bowden to the show. All right. And guys, I want to apologize for the craziness and it going in and out. This what it is. But the first thing I want to talk about, and like I said, this is going to be a different show, obviously, from the get-go, is becoming awake to the truth. And for me, there was 3 components to the truth. That was experience, knowledge, and understanding of the system to become really awake. And Scott, I know that with our experience in the hospital, that kind of really jarred us awake, but I don't think we really knew how deep this was and how corrupt the system was until we did our own research and further looked into it. So can you tell us, Scott, what made you realize that this was more than just a broken system or a simple human errors?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greta. Thanks for having me, by the way. It's fantastic to see you. You've been a supporter since almost day one. We had first time I met you was in April of 22. Grace died in October of 21, and we did a rally outside the hospital. And you flew in from Texas, and it was, and it's become a friendship since then. So I really appreciate you. As far as the wake up process for me. So Grace died October of 21. I started speaking out right away. But I didn't realize what I was speaking out about. My first opportunity was on Newsmax 2 months after Grace died. And then I started digging into the records more and more and more. I had sent complaints to the Medical Examining Board, to the Joint Commission, to the Department of Justice, all the places you're supposed to send the complaints to, and everybody rejected them. So I thought, wait, is everybody in on this? And then in July of 22, I started researching the parallels with the Holocaust compared to now. And I stumbled across a term, which is Hegelian dialectic. And at that time, God showed me to not use Grace's story to expose evil, because it fits into Satan's model. He needs the evil exposed in order to become the angel of light and present a man-made solution to the problem he created. So I didn't really understand that at the time, but now I have several thousand hours of research into this entire evil situation. I'm focused mainly, of course, on the medical industrial complex, but what I learned in the process of the research, Greta, and what really woke me up is Ephesians 5:11. And when I dug into Ephesians 5:11, it says, have nothing to do with the fruitful deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. And you remember I just said, God told me, don't use Grace's story to expose evil. Well, the word expose in Ephesians 5:11 is different in Bible translation. So my Bible that I have used for the last 30 years is an NIV, and there's 450 million copies of the NIV sold in America. And when I dug into the older translations, specifically the Tyndale and Geneva from the early 1500s, they said to reprove or rebuke evil, not expose evil. Well, that makes sense, because when you when you rebuke evil, you are stopping it in the name of Jesus Christ. And anyway, that's what woke me up. That process started in July of 22, the Hegelian dialectic, and then researching how this all fits together really showed me what is going on. And what I'm writing right now, I'll just jump ahead to today. I'm working on a research paper that's titled "The Government Can Legally Kill Us," or "The Government Is Legally Killing Us," I should say. And that's my current research, and I'm doing it as a research paper, so it's all footnoted so people can see the concept. And what the idea is that the government has made state actors out of the entire medical industrial complex. So not just big pharma, but hospitals, the insurance company, and then the licensing of doctors and nurses. And all of a sudden, these players become the unwitting implementers of the population control agenda. And so that's what I'm working on. It's a neat walk. It's a walk of faith. Of course, I took about 4 months off for the trial. I didn't do interviews for about 4 months. The trial was 3 weeks long. worked with the legal team every single day for 3 months before the trial, and of course every day during the trial. And that was intense, but that was just a puzzle piece. It wasn't the goal. It was a puzzle piece on the mission that we're on. And you mentioned the Bible verse, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, the saving of many lives, which is happening today. Well, that is our calling, which is Genesis 50:20. So I hope that answered your question, Greta.
Yes, thank you. I'm in and out, of course, and not mentally, just on the screen. But so I have the same question for Dr. Bowden, but Dr. Bowden is coming in at a different angle, because your career is about learning the system, and so, but a lot of people that are in your field, it seems like they abandon their own personal logic, their own reasoning. And it seems like you were one of the few that retained your critical thinking skills. So what was it, and your personal experience in treating patients based on their needs and seeing their outcomes? I mean, that's kind of obvious to me. But at what point did you realize that there was something really sinister going on, and this wasn't the healthcare system that you thought it was?
Part of it started because, I had 4 boys in 5 years. And so I was pregnant for 5 years straight. And I got a real healthy sense of what it's like to be a patient. And I did not like it. And so when I went back to practice, I decided I was going to remove myself from those third parties. And that positioned me very well during the pandemic. I call myself third party free because I don't contract with hospitals, insurance companies, or the government. And so I just say, the only people I work for are my patients. And when the buck stops with you, it's a lot different when you're part of some big system and you can just pass the blame along to other people. So when COVID started, I was just, doing what I thought all doctors were doing. I mean, patient shows up sick and you try to treat them. I wasn't scared of getting sick. But I didn't realize the extent of the evil until things, until the shots came out and things really got bad. It has been a big learning curve, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for having me. I love the name of your show because you have street smarts and you're fiery, and I love your spirit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't back down, even in a bad situation. I'm going to try to make it work to the best of my ability. But I want to talk about and Scott mentioned it, but I want to talk about state medical boards and reporting. And you have a little experience with that, just a tad, Dr. Bowden. And I was wondering if you would explain the situation about the medical board. And basically, you also mentioned you didn't know how corrupt things were until shots started being fired at you. They probably have the biggest cannon pointed at you right now and in the past. And could you go ahead and explain that story about what the medical board is really doing to you?
Well, yeah, it involves a man that was in the hospital, Jason Jones, sheriff's deputy, father of 6, served his community for 30 years, protecting people, could not get early treatment, could not find ivermectin, ended up in the hospital, and he, same story as many people, ended up on a ventilator. He'd been on a ventilator for a month, and they were discussing hospice. His wife wanted him to have the opportunity to try ivermectin, and the hospital refused. This was Texas Hughley Hospital in Fort Worth. So she sued the hospital, and she asked me to be the expert witness. She asked me to be the prescribing doctor. And I testified along with Senator Bob Hall, who we all love, and we won the case. And the hospital was ordered to grant me emergency temporary privileges. They gave us a lot of pushback on that, even though there was a court order. They made it very hard. They initially denied my application, even though I had a spotless record, never been sued for malpractice, never, prior to this, had a great reputation. But they pushed back. They made me resubmit the application. It was very confusing, and the lawyers for the case said, yes, you have the green light, you can go to the hospital. So I sent the nurse to the hospital. and she was greeted by the police. And police turned her, made her leave, which, she was fine. She quietly left. There was not some big scene there, although that's what they claim. And Mr. Jones was never permitted to get the ivermectin. The hospital appealed, and they won on appeal. He somehow survived his hospital stay, and which I attribute to the fact that his wife was there every day, and she was rubbing ivermectin on him, which I did not prescribe. She found on her own. And I think that he survived because of that. But unfortunately, he lost half of his body weight during the hospital stay, and he was never able to make a full recovery. And he did, unfortunately, pass away. So the medical board has been going after me for this for almost 4 years now. They initially wanted to fine me $5,000 and have me retake the jurisprudence exam and take 8 hours of continuing medical education. And this was without a judge or a jury or anything. This was just a meeting. And I said no. And so I appealed that. The appeal has gone on. They couldn't find an expert witness to testify against me, but still the hospital, they won. So they found me guilty. They said that because I sent a nurse to the hospital without privileges, that I was guilty. And we had a hearing 4 months ago to determine my punishment, and they somehow can't come up with a conclusion on that. So we're waiting for my punishment, and then I will appeal again. But I'm going to fight this to the end, because it's just completely ridiculous. And I don't know if you saw this, but they're about to make ivermectin over the counter in Texas after all this. And it's bittersweet for me because, imagine, I mean, none of this would have happened if ivermectin had been over the counter. None of this would have happened, and so many people would have survived.
Right. And we're going to touch up on that, as ivermectin was considered off-label use, and it wasn't approved for COVID, so they couldn't allow that. But I've gone through so many different medical records, including my own, where they've used drug after drug, treatments, procedures that were all off-label. None of them were approved for COVID, but they used it for COVID. But not ivermectin. Oh, we can't have that. And then people like you are facing this BS, and your career, getting tarnished like this. Well, in my eyes, it's not, because anybody that can see, it's just all false. But to put somebody through all that crap.
Well, yeah, I'm going to pick up because I think you're frozen. But yeah, it's very politicized. I mean, you look at there are now 4 states that have made ivermectin over the counter, but the safety profile of ivermectin does not change depending on which state you're in. It is safe wherever you are. If it's safe in Louisiana, it's safe in Texas. But they're treating it like the abortion pill. And the FDA needs to really just step up and follow the science, not the politics. And they need to make ivermectin over the counter. There's just been so much needless controversy over this extremely safe medication. Scott, I'm curious, did Grace take ivermectin? Did y'all try that at all? What was your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Interestingly, you probably remember the NIH website had ivermectin as an approved treatment for COVID. And of course, they scrubbed that. I screenshot that, fortunately. When Grace got the sniffles, so to answer your question specifically, when she got the sniffles in late September of 21.
All right, I think I'm finally back.
Yeah.
I went ahead and interviewed Scott. I took over. Answering my question, Greta.
Thank you so much. As a matter of fact, I appreciate that. As a matter of fact, I was going to put up a clip or a picture, the first picture, and that's of for you, Dr. Bowden. And I want you to go ahead and describe it, because in case I cut off, and plus you know it better than me. Chris, go ahead and pick one up.
Yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene's chief of staff reached out to me after this. So I have to give her credit. I feel kind of bad because she had no idea. But yeah, Advent Health, they're the ones that own Texas Hughley Hospital. And yeah, it's pretty accurate. They fought tooth and nail. They would have rather have this guy die than let him try ivermectin. It's really unbelievable. It's not Christian like at all. But yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene now is aware of the situation. And, you know, she's one of 3 people in Congress who has called for the COVID shots to be pulled off the market. So I have to give her credit. She and Thomas Massey and Senator Ron Johnson. Scott, do you want to finish what you were saying about Grace and the ivermectin?
So, Greta, Dr. Bowden asked me about Grace with ivermectin. So what we did is we knew of a doctor who we already had a relationship in Appleton, Wisconsin, where we live north of town about 20 minutes, and we got a Zoom call and she prescribed ivermectin. We started Grace on ivermectin. Essentially what we were doing was following the FLCCC protocol. And, you know, so ivermectin was part of that, vitamins. But the thing that got me was we were monitoring Grace's oxygen saturation. So I bought into I didn't know COVID was a PSYOP at that time. So we were just following the less evil protocol, monitoring her oxygen. And that's really what got us into the trap. When Grace's oxygen dropped to 88%, the FLCCC protocol said that's an emergency, admit her to the hospital. And, you know, if I would have never taken Grace to the hospital, she'd be alive today because she just went in with a cold. And, you know, it's a sad situation, but that's why I keep speaking out, because I don't want anybody else to lose somebody because they are not awake to what is possible in a hospital setting. You know, and the trial, of course, showed, you know, how dangerous a hospital is.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were all fanatically checking oxygen saturations, which no one had ever done before. You know, the general public never did that before. Doctors knew about it, but yeah, I'd never advised a patient to get an oxygen saturation monitor and monitor it at home. That's a whole new thing that came with COVID. And it shows with Grace that had some dire consequences. And what was more important was how you felt. If you had severe oxygen hunger, it's a lot different than what the number says on your finger.
Correct.
And what I learned during COVID was that because I mean, we were taught if it goes below 90, that's serious. But I saw people coming to my clinic with oxygen saturations in the 70s, even 60s. Who were, you wouldn't expect them to be talking. I mean, they didn't look happy or they didn't look healthy. They looked like they were struggling. But the fact that they were able to even walk into the office with that kind of oxygen saturation was something I'd never seen before or expected or was taught. I mean, it was, you know, I learned a lot. But yeah, it's very sad that it was a number that did that and not.
Well, that's right on. I mean, ultimately, you know, what you said it perfectly. I had no business buying that tool other than it was part of the protocol. So, you know, saying it a different way, my critical thinking checked out in favor of a protocol, you know, and I'm a critical thinker. My background is as a CPA. I've done strategic planning for decades. But something with COVID, I mean, you know, it checked out. And the reality is, you know, I should have known to not buy that tool because we had no baseline.
No,
you had a baseline.
You don't deserve this blame, actually. Sorry. The people that you brought her to in the hospital deserve the blame. I mean, that's their job to interpret. Okay, my power's about to go out now. I've got a big storm, so. But that's their job, is to interpret that, not your job. That's crazy. So you do not own that. The people that own that are the people that admitted her to the hospital, or, you know, even, you know, maybe very early on, doctors didn't realize that, yeah, you could, a person could tolerate 88% and have it not be an emergency. But we quickly realized that COVID was a little different. That people were tolerating these oxygen saturations without, you know, freaking out and putting them on ventilators. So you do not own that, Scott. I'm sorry, but that.
Well, I understand. I mean, I look at life through the lens of what can I learn from it? And the reality is I did blindly trust the system. And that's what I'm speaking out against. When we blindly trust any of man's systems, that's what Satan wants us to do. And so that's why I speak out. So I take ownership for that. I've had to repent of that. And that doesn't change the hospital's obligation. Obviously, we had a lawsuit in an attempt to hold them accountable in their system, meaning their legal system. That is not what I would do unless God called us to do it. But in their system, of course, we found out how many roadblocks there are and how standard of care is defined. We think of it's so obvious what happened to Grace. They gave her meds that killed her and put an illegal do not resuscitate order on her chart. But none of that matters when you're in their courtroom.
Oh yeah, I know. And they own the courtroom.
Yeah, and you're one level below that when you're in the medical examining board, because they're the judge, jury, and executioner. You don't even have a. That's. I found that out when in Wisconsin the medical examining board is made up of 13 people appointed by the governor, of which 10 are doctors. So when I filed the complaint against the doctor, of course they came back and said, the doctor didn't do anything wrong. I thought, how is this even possible? But when I found out what the medical examining board was, I realized, of course, it's like the police officer turning a fellow police officer in for speeding. It's not going to happen.
I wanted to put up a clip, and I wanted to get both of your reactions on this clip, and maybe if things go well, I'll get to have a response too. But Chris, go ahead and play clip 1. And this is back about the medical board. Scott, you can probably relate to this one.
The 2 doctors that we filed complaints against, those cases were dismissed in August. I wanted to find out if we were able to ask for a review of that dismissal and how to do it. I had difficulty getting a response from the Arizona Medical Board. I filed for a review of the cases for 2 reasons. We filed because we didn't feel there was due process. They did not contact any of the witnesses that I had provided for them, which would be my siblings, my niece who had visited my mom. None of them were contacted by the board before they dismissed. So they did agree to review the dismissals, and I was told I could come testify at a hearing last October. So I did come, and I did testify. And one of the major things that I spoke to, you only have 3 minutes, but I did speak about the horrificness of, is this a standard of care in Arizona, putting DNRs on patients against their wishes, withholding food and water against their wishes. They did dismiss the cases again, and I'm not at all surprised. As I sat listening, waiting for my turn to speak, I heard lawyer after lawyer defending doctors for the stress they felt during COVID. Explaining drinking, explaining away poor decisions. It was very disheartening to sit through that.
Wow.
And I know I had mentioned to you, it just came to our attention just recently that the board minutes for that particular day's board minutes mentioned my testimony. And Dr. Bethencourt, who's on the board, he falsely stated that there were conversations between myself, a hospitalist, an internist, and hospice agreeing to a DNR. And that, besides being false and upsetting because the DNR was such an issue during the time she was there, all I can think is that something hit a chord with somebody that they would feel a need to say that. Right. But again, it shows us that we really, truly don't have due process with the medical board.
Yeah. So can I get y'all's reaction to that? And since you both have, experience with medical board. And my question is, what is the medical board for?
Well, they're supposed to protect the public from dangerous doctors, but they've obviously been politicized. I turned in a doctor to the medical board because I reviewed charts, and I mentioned this on Joe Rogan, and it got a lot of. But a patient that the chart that I reviewed, they basically pushed morphine and insulin on him. He was not DNR, and he died. His sugar was not elevated. It was like 124. They gave him insulin. There's no reason to do that. His pain score was 0. His respiratory rate was 3. So he was dying, but they killed him. I mean, it did look like he was going to die, but they actively killed him. And they gave him insulin and morphine. And the only reason I can think is maybe they needed the bed. I don't know why they did that. And I reported this doctor to the medical board. Nothing. I had the chart. I had the documentation. I had the sister who said he's not DNR. He was, a full code. Crazy.
And I'd add, Greta, outside of the medical examining board, that lady in the clip asked a great question. Is this the standard of care in Arizona? And, through the trial, it's interesting because the standard of care, a lot of people would think it's something you just pull off the shelf. And so that is the case in some things. If you get a positive strep culture, the standard of care is an antibiotic. But the standard of care in a courtroom is what would a reasonable physician do in a same or similar situation. So our doctor expert said clearly a doctor cannot unilaterally put a DNR on somebody's chart. He's got to get consent. He's got to have a witness. He's got to have a signature, and there's got to be a DNR bracelet. Well, the defense brought in 5 experts, and their experts said a doctor can unilaterally place a DNR on a patient without consent, without a witness, without a signature, and without a DNR bracelet. And so you have now 5 against 1 on the witness stand.
I have that clip that I'm going to play later.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, we'd like to think that there is these objective standards, but it's anything but objective.
I want to move on to the insurance real quick. And again, I'm going to try to put up these clips and have y'all discuss them because I don't know if I'm breaking in or out, and y'all are breaking in and out for me. But luckily, I know y'all so well that I already know what your answers are and a lot of the answers because I've listened to you and I've spoken with you. But this next clip is about Medicare and insurance. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but boy, it's a doozy. And I want you to get both of your reactions on this. So Chris, can you go ahead and play clip 2?
You don't want to know why something isn't covered by insurance that you think might help you or your doctor thinks might help you, or it's an alternative. I'm going to read you this. This is Medicare Guidelines, section 2251.3. I'm quoting this to you. A treatment plan that seeks to prevent disease and enhance the quality of life, or therapy that is performed to maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic disease is deemed not medically necessary. I'm going to read this to you again. A treatment plan that seeks to prevent disease. That sounds like a good idea, right? A treatment plan designed to prevent disease. Or enhance the quality of life. Also sounds like a good idea. Or a therapy that is performed to maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic disease. So if you already have a disease and we're trying to prevent it from getting worse, all these things that I just mentioned are deemed by Medicare not medically necessary. So when you go to comment on a post like I might make or some other providers might make, and you're going to go, oh, I don't believe it because if it's not covered by my insurance, I don't believe it's worthwhile. This is Medicare guidelines. And most insurances, if you don't know, some people will comment on this and say, absolutely, this is the way it is. People who are in the insurance business know what Medicare decides sooner or later will be what other insurance companies decide to do. Medicare sort of sets the table and everybody else sort of just follows along and comes to dinner. Bottom line is, just because it's not covered doesn't mean it's not good. It just means that they consider it not medically necessary. Anyway, let me know in your comments what you think of this. Put it in the comments below. Go ahead. Write it down there. Dr. Dave Morris at Magnolia Medical Center here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Take care today.
Spot on. And that's why I don't contract with Medicare. And nothing infuriates me more when I have some nameless third-party entity telling me I can't do something. And this sort of prompted me to get out of the system. As an ENT, we do an endoscopic exam of the nose. It's very quick. It takes about 10 minutes. It's kind of something that sets us apart from your primary care doctors. We can take a look deep in your nose, right? And the third party, though, will half the time just say, oh, well, this wasn't medically necessary, so we're not going to pay for it, because they're just going to find any reason they can not to pay for anything. So it's all about money to them, and the doctor really has no control over it. When they contract with the government, they lose a significant amount of control. So.
Absolutely right on. The two priority things that people ask me, what should I do once they hear this stuff? What should I do? And I tell them, number one, drop your medical insurance. Number two, find a medical professional who does not accept Medicare or Medicaid. And I learned that all the way back in 2018. I found out I had heart disease, and there was a good nurse. The doctor, through all the tests, you go through all the rigmarole, and I had done quite a bit of research, a couple 100 hours on heart disease, and they wanted to prescribe a statin. And I said, I'm not doing the statin. And the nurse told me that, Scott, you have to take the statin. I said, what are you talking about? I don't have to do anything. And she said, the standard of care for heart disease is the statin. And I said, well, I'm not going to follow that. And she said, our Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates are based on what percentage of our patient population we get to follow the standard of care. I said, oh, I'm not on Medicare or Medicaid. She said, you didn't hear me. She said, it's based on our entire patient population. And so if there's enough people like you who reject the statin, we have to fire you as a patient. So that's how they trap people that are not on Medicare or Medicaid. And that's why I tell everybody, find a doctor and or nurse, whoever you need for your situation before it happens, who's not captured in the Medicare Medicaid system.
I just read a report about statins, and if you're on them for 5 years, they extend your life by 3 days. So I don't think that the risk is the benefit is worth the risk in this case, because the risks are a lot greater. But yeah, to me, the most dangerous thing to your health is good health insurance. So I would, if I were to had to go for another reason, I would not give them my insurance card. And the thing about that clip is they had a community note added to it. And the community note made it only worse. It said that these treatments were pertained to chiropractic treatments and to maintenance therapy. So basically they're telling you is if you have a surgery or if you are on drugs to maintain your therapy or improve your life, then that's okay. They'll pay for that. Yeah. But anything, holistic or natural, whatever, they're not going to pay for that. So their community notes just told them who they're working for. It's a disgrace. We have to take a break real quick. I'm going to try to get this out without getting cut off again. But this platform is not supported by any kind of, big money people. We're independent. Street Talk platform is all independent. They're not a nonprofit. They're not affiliated with anyone. Guess what? 10% of zero is still zero, and that's what they get with their affiliations. So we're not affiliated. So if you would please donate, that could help us out. The Street Talk Network is allowing me to do this at no cost to me, but it still costs them. And if it doesn't come from donations, then it comes out of their pocket. So please go and get gear or music or mugs or healing therapies from Light Dove Ministries, and you can use a promo code with Street Talk for 15% off there, and go to protocolkills.com, get free documents. If you have to go to the hospital, at least you'll have a little bit of protection there. And thank you again for helping us out, and we'll be right back.